I'm going to be 70 in a couple of months, and for a very long time, I thought that I would solve my eating and my weight problem and then help other people. Well, I solved the problem several years ago, but I've been really afraid to do anything to help other people. And I had an astrologer tell me, just make a YouTube video, just start talking, just make a YouTube video. So that's what I'm doing. And I've been resisting it for a long time. And so I'll just begin. I am in human design, which I've been studying for about a year. I am a 3/6 profile emotional projector, and I have my sun is gate 29.3, and that is the gate of commitment, saying yes to everything, not knowing when enough is enough, having to learn how to say no, which has been quite the journey. I've been on a spiritual path since I was in high school. Even before, I think it happened in high school, started in high school. I had a couple of experiences, spiritual experiences, one in a church when I was a preteen, and then again in high school, a couple of experiences where I had a feeling about something and I didn't follow the feeling, and then something bad happened. It happened twice in a short period of time. So I learned to trust whatever that feeling was. And that feeling has taken me on quite a journey. And I suffered a lot because I was one of the 2 fat kids in my school. I was, both of us were girls, and I was the kind of kid that was the last picked for the sports, when they pick people for the sports teams. I was really good at sports, but they didn't pick me because I was fat and I had like cooties or something, just because I was fat. And I was very shy. I was incredibly shy. And it's because I knew that people didn't like me and it hurt. So I spent my whole life living in food, thinking about food, eating food, feeling ashamed about my weight, thinking about food to make me happy, eating food to make me happy, feeling ashamed. It's been a cycle, on and on and on and on. And I have done a lot of things to try and solve that problem. And it took me on a long, long journey. And every time I would learn a new thing, I would go and I would share it with all the people I knew. I was just so excited that I discovered something that was like life-changing, and I wanted everyone I knew and everyone I cared about to know about it. So this is going to be my way to come out of hiding and break through fear, which happens to be my New Year's intention for 2023, to be free of fear. I mean, really, seriously, Dominique? I think I might need to do it for more than 1 year. So I have a lot to talk about. A lot of things that have been really, really helpful for me, and I've learned them really, really deeply, because as a human design 3/6, I'm constantly experimenting. But since I'm almost 70, I'm now a 6, and I'm a role model, not to go say, hey, do this, but just my life and the things I've learned along the way. So I want to share that. I don't want to not share it, in the hopes that anything that I could share could make a difference for somebody. So recently, and I'll backtrack with all the things, but so much has happened just in the last few years. It's always been like this, frankly. The 29, the gate 29 or gene key 29 is commitment. That is the gift. That is the essence. The essence of the gene key is devotion, but it's commitment, like all in, being like 100% yes. I would always say, I'm 1,000% yes. And then I would like change. Then I would move on to something else. So it's not like I'm committed and I stay in that one thing forever and ever. I'm committed fully to get every ounce of wisdom out of it that I can get, every ounce of experience. And then I move on to the next thing. And I was trying to come up with a name for my YouTube channel, but because I changed so much, like the first one I did back in the, I don't know, was it 2009 or 2010, when I was doing the presence process breathing, and that was life-changing. And I made a few videos back then. And so it was about the presence process. And then in the last year, I was doing past life regression with Ainsley McLeod. And I thought, oh, I'm an old soul in a young soul world. That was kind of like my identity. But my identity changes all the time. The only identity that I really can say is absolutely true is that I change. And in the pursuit of more peace, a more open heart, more happiness, a deeper sense of joy, and for the good of everybody. I really want to make a difference. Since I was a kid, I was suffering because of what was going on in the world. I mean, I was like a 7-year-old who was obsessed with slavery. This little white girl in a little white neighborhood. I didn't even know a black person, but I was obsessed with how could this happen and what can we do? And so I was very, very, very obsessed with it as a kid. And then when I was 8 and I discovered the Holocaust, I became obsessed with the Holocaust. How did this happen? This can never happen. So I've always had this sense of somehow there's something I have to do to stop people from hurting each other. I remember seeing a psychic when I was in my my early 20s or late teens, probably my late teens. I was in college. And I was telling her this, like I felt like I finally got the thing, you know, I need to teach people how to love themselves, because children are not taught how to love themselves by parents who didn't learn how to love themselves because something happened or somebody hurt somebody or someone was wounded and closed off, and so they couldn't love the child didn't feel loved, and so it just creates a snowball. And I thought, that's it, that's the answer. And the therapist said to me, I think you need to learn to love yourself. And so I was maybe 19 at the time. That was, oh my God, that was 50 years ago. And I thought, that's not the problem. But I didn't even really put 2 and 2 together, because I used to journal about how much I hated myself at the time. So she was correct. I wanted to kind of bypass my own problems and jump into helping and saving others. Although I never took the action to save others, I was so like empty and wounded within myself that all I did was think about food. And at that time, I also lived kind of in a fantasy world where I would just fantasize some guy liking me, or I fall in love with a teacher, and I would just sit there during the class imagining us in our happy little home. Anyway, so I could not be present. I couldn't be present, period. And I didn't realize, it was so many years later that I realized how the food was my way of leaving the present moment. I remember saying food was the happy when there was no happy in the life. And many times there was no happy in the life, not because my life was an unhappy life, but because I just felt unhappy inside. And there was no justification for it. And, you know, there was just maybe the general angst of that I didn't have a boyfriend, or I didn't have, you know, what other people had. And, or I was just afraid all the time, and I didn't know it. So, bottom line, I've been studying human design for about a year. I've been studying astrology since I was in college, really, really heavily studying astrology again. since 2015, and it's kind of segued into this like discovery of human design. I discovered it because I was listening to a podcast that Ainsley McLeod was doing with somebody, and she was talking about human design. So I checked it out, found out what I was, and I went, oh, that's interesting. Wait for the invitation. No wonder when sometimes I talk and I can get really intense, people would just get up and walk away. And I thought, oh my God, I'm saying something that's going to change their life, and they get up and walk away. Ouch. That was painful. And so what it told me was, shut up. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say, which is what my sister used to tell me when we were growing up. So it's been a long journey. So with the human design, that kind of led me to discovering the gene keys. And I have decided, I was listening to an interview with Richard Rudd, who developed the gene keys. He was one of the trainers. I guess he was the #1 trainer or teacher of human design in the UK back in the 90s. And he said that the Venus sequence that he came up with is the pathway, basically a roadmap to your wounds. Now, I have done a lot of work on my wounds, on the shadow, all of that stuff. I became a therapist. I went and got a master's degree in psychology when I was in my 40s. And I have done deep, deep, deep work. I was in 12-step program for years and years. I did all these spiritual studies for years and years and years. Deep, deep, deep emotional work. But still, there's something blocking me from being unconditionally loving. Still, I have fear. And I really, I intend, as my intention that has been proclaimed for 2023, is to be free of fear. I need to face this. And so what happened was, I was listening to him in the interview. He was talking about how when there's somebody who's hurt or needs something, or maybe a homeless person asking for money or something, and there's a lot of people around, nobody does anything because they think somebody else is going to do it. And I realized, as he was saying that was me. And I felt shame, like, oh my God, I don't know how to get past that. What happens with me around those kinds of situations is I feel like if I give somebody something, then they're going to want more from me, and they're going to follow me home. And then it's going to become, they scare me, frankly. So the next day I went to the ocean, and I was, as I was walking down the pathway that I always walk, there was this woman who I looked off into the side, into my peripheral vision, who said, help, I need help. And she looked kind of crazy and scary. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to want something from me. And I just thought, I can't. And she goes, I need help. And I turned to look at her, and she needed help out of her wetsuit. She was stuck in her wetsuit. And I didn't even look at her. I didn't even listen. I didn't have the compassion to even stop and see, what does this woman need? And so immediately, of course, I felt ashamed, and I helped her out of her wetsuit. And she said, I said, I just had something on my mind, which was a lie. I was scared. And then she said, oh, well, you just look like, you had somewhere to go. And so I said the same story 5 times. Oh, well, I wasn't even thinking, or I'm almost 70. So I was using all these excuses for being unkind, not being kind. And I went into the ocean, and I was in the water, and thankfully I was wearing sunglasses, because I just started to cry about how unkind I was out of fear. And then I thought, there was a better way to handle this situation. There was a better way. I could set a boundary with somebody if they want to follow me home, or, I didn't have any money. I mean, I just had my, my implements for the, hanging out in the ocean. But there was a better way, and my heart is closed, and I need to do something about it. So anyway, the Venus sequence in the gene keys, I'm going to take it on, and I'm going to take it on publicly. So I'm going to post videos as I go through this process. And I'm also going to post videos about my journey, things that have helped me, things I've learned. And if anybody reads this, like I'm writing it, right? If anybody sees this, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. See, you have to be perfect. If you have any questions, I'll try and check on them. I am a projector. If anybody knows about human design, I don't have my own energy. I don't generate, it's like I get depleted really easily. But I want to help. I want to help with things I know. And I'll probably talk from my experiences a lot of the time, because my experiences are where I've gained wisdom. And that's what I feel compelled to share. In human design, the only channels that I have to the throat, I have lots of gates in the throat, so I must talk, but the only channels where they connect is to the G center, which is the soul, the sense of self. So when I speak, I'm speaking from my heart and I'm speaking from my soul. And I have what's called the outside circuitry. In the human design, there's the channels are in lines, and there's the ones on the outside, the ones in the middle, and the ones on the inside. Most of mine are on the outside, which means I also have to share. So that's the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to share so that I could hopefully make a difference for somebody. And I just, FYI, I was obese almost my entire life. And I stopped binge eating in 2017. And I've basically been a normal size ever since I got down over 150 pounds. And I haven't binged since then. So I've accomplished something. I was a binge eater as a child, so it was a huge thing. And if I can help in any way in that regard as well, I'm here for that. I'm also here for spiritual journey. The part of spiritual journey that to me that is most significant is discovering who we are separate from others, so that we are not comparing ourselves to others, like either as less than or more than, I'm better than, or I'm not as good as. Because that's been one of the most healing things in my entire journey, is to see who I am. That's why I got into astrology in the first place, to see that I was different. I didn't have to be like my sisters or, my friends, that I had my own unique way of being, and it was for a good reason. So many, many things I've learned about that, and I'm so happy. The reason I'm doing this right now is because I promised somebody that I would do it by June 1st. And today is May 31st. So this is the last possible moment. I have fulfilled my agreement to you, Jan. Thank you for encouraging me.